Hey guys, long time no talk. I'm back to talk about the recent controversy regarding Riot's patch philosophy, and this video is going to be a bit unrefined, a bit long-winded. I do apologize, but I'm just trying to get back into it. Anyways, let's go back a bit to talk about um, the groundwork that that it created the foundation to the problems we have today. Throughout the spring and summer split, we saw a lot of lane swaps. We saw a lot of just early game mitigation, risk mitigation, to where both teams would take like both outer turrets or something like that, and just get through the early game very easily. Um, Once again, the community had an issue with this one. It didn't look like your typical solo queue game. You never swap in solo queue. So Riot in 6.15 introduced two tower changes to change competitive play to make it more like a solo and dynamic queue. The first change was damage reduction on turrets early that scales off, and the second change was introducing a first blood for the first tower uh, taken in a game. So these changes, while they were great for solo and dynamic queue, they were great for to make LCS and other competitive regions look like something you could play in solo queue. It's not so much an issue with the patch itself. Players are complaining about it, but I feel the biggest issue is the amount of time that was given to the players before such a big tournament. Summer playoffs are incredibly important. They're one of the most important tournaments of the year because it legitimately uh, tells you if you're going to Worlds or not. The patch was released on August 2nd, and they were given 11 days. Teams were given 11 days if they were in the quarterfinals to develop strategies to these changes. Now, this is like your boss telling you, well, you know that project you've been working on for 3 months? Well, here's an entirely new part of the project that invalidates a lot of the work you already did, and you have 11 days to figure it out, and this determines whether or not you keep your job or not. Good luck. So, so what a lot of people don't understand about big patches like this is that when something like this hits, nobody has any idea what's going on. It's simply just grinding out data and collecting data to be able to figure out what's best for your team. If you were swapping all season, what do you do now at this point? You haven't been practicing in 2v1 2v2 lanes. You weren't playing for that because this entire season it was about a matter of being able to get the swap down. So now you need to practice 2v2 lanes, you need to practice 1v1 lanes, and on top of that, you need to fix your macro play accordingly. Playing for wards in a lane swap is completely different from playing for wards in a 2v2 scenario. Now, once again, this is great for solo and dynamic cube players that are just watching because it's really interesting to them. They can see like how they can improve themselves and things like that. But if you have to work on that, and then you also have to design champions that you want to play within the patch, it becomes a lot of work. Not to mention, you could be developing a strategy, developing one idea, and suddenly something comes out in another region, or like even in with your own region that completely invalidates your strategy, and you're stuck there on the drawing board once again figuring out, well, how do we deal with this situation? And you tend to see a lot of teams are simply unable to adapt mid-series because they weren't given enough time to prepare. Now, I'm not saying that better teams are necessarily, losing because of these circumstances. What I'm saying is if you're going to do something so drastic, at least give teams some time to prepare beforehand. The matter of the fact is, in comparison to the spring split this season, where it was the patch before was nothing but a bunch of champion tweaks and changes and nerf buffs, the advantage you got from from your summer split performance was such a huge advantage simply because Riot didn't account for the fact of how much this actually changes the macro game for teams in competitive. Even teams like SKT did not look very good at the beginning of this patch. Like someone like Faker, who's renowned for having so many champions in his pool, played Malzahar in 2 games, then it got banned in 3 games, and he looked awful on Cassidy. He looked awful on Cassiopeia. So are you going to tell me that Faker is simply falling off? I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to think that like Faker is like an awful player now simply because he wasn't able to have one champion. It's a matter of fact that if you have to design an entirely new strategy for your team, there's only going to be so much you can do to implement certain champions because you can only really realistically play 2 to 3 scrims a day. 3 scrims a day is like pushing it hardcore too. So if you're only able to get 2 scrim practices in, let's say, and you practice maybe 2 champions, one of those champions is banned because of scouting. The other one is the other one you get to play, and then both champions are banned because they're scouting. Like, what are you left to do in that situation? Like, you can only prepare so much if you're only given so much time. So what I believe Riot needs to really do is to admit fault in this situation and never again change the game, the fundamental of competitive play like this before such a big event. If you want to do it before Worlds, sure, give them a month and a half. After playoffs, be like, okay, here's what we're doing for tower changes to stop lane swaps. You have a month and a half, go for it. It's very similar to what they did at the International for Dota. The qualifiers were in June. They dropped the patch in July, August 2nd. Everyone was playing on that patch, and if you can't prepare everything that you need to in a month, then that's on you. But to only give 11 days, like it was like it's like 11 to 17 days, depending on where you placed in your standings and all that stuff. And like I understand the need for to give an advantage to a player who performed well in the regular season, but I really feel like Riot dropped the ball this time around because it was such a drastic change. And you might not see it now, but you're going to see the metagame evolve at a much more rapid rate now that all the data's come out, and there's going to be a defined strategy come Worlds about how teams need to play the map. And unfortunately, you're going to see they're going to see the possibility of certain teams may very well been able to do well had they been given the amount of time to prepare this, or they're probably if the team qualifies and looks terrible in playoffs in Gauntlet and then shows up at Worlds, you're going to be really surprised. And I'm telling you, it's simply because they were finally given enough time to breathe and relax. Well, not necessarily relax, to really sit down and analyze what's best and what are we able to figure out. Because this isn't like real sports, right? The real sports hardly ever change. The ball is the same, the strategy can vary, but the fundamentals of the game never really change. And I think that's something that people really need to understand, that patch adaptation, you can only force so much in such a short period of time. So that's the point I wanted to get across. I hope you understand it. I hope you liked it. If you disagree, if you have any questions, if you have any comments in regards to this video, please go ahead and ask me in the comment section. I will get to everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.